everybody, our Returnal review is about to get dropped. We have some good information for you to share. Let me get to the beginning and most important part of the conversation. Is Returnal worth your $70? Absolutely yes. Is it my game of the year? Absolutely yes. It is the game that I have been excited for a long time. I am a huge Housemarque fan. I have been looking and waiting and anticipating this game coming out, and now I have finally had a chance to play it. I've been playing it for probably a little bit over 40 hours or so in terms of when I got to final completion of at least the first part of what I think is the ending of Returnal. Housemarque has nailed it. Housemarque has knocked it out of the box as usual. I am a huge Housemarque stan. So to be able to see this be the game that they are bringing to the next generation and the PS5 makes this definitely the game to own, in my opinion, for the PS5. If you're thinking about whether, you're on the fence about getting one, and you weren't on the fence about Miles Morales, and you were still trying to figure out which game is the one that I want to get, Miles Morales is a fantastic game to have in the equation. If you're thinking about the other game that I think is the flagship title right now for the PS5, it has to be Returnal. The game starts out with you as your main protagonist, Celine, crash landing on the planet Atropos. You are dazed, confused, you don't know what's going on, you have no idea what's happening, and you walk across a corpse of your body that you didn't know was your body until you wind up walking up on it and saying, oh my goodness, this is me, how did I get here?
Scout log, Atropos. I have found a deceased Astra Scout here. Checking identification on helmet.
It starts off this really fantastic and really interesting story that rolls through so many different versions of art that I love. It's a mix of a Metrovania. It's a roguelike. It has story beats from games like PT, Memento, Event Horizon. And it adds all these things together to really pull together this package that is pretty profound for a game of this genre. It's basically a shump, but with all these other layers, it makes it so much cooler to be able to see what that particular kind of angle winds up leaning into. Story-wise, it feels really comprehensive and cohesive. Although it is still shrouded in a lot of bit of mystery, there are still pieces that you need to uncover through each playthrough. In every subsequent one that you go through, you kind of unlock a little bit more of that story. I just love the tone of the game. The game's tone feels like it fits really well. The voice acting is fantastic in kind of the most sci-fi ways. The main character's voice really nails this kind of, I know everything, but I don't know what's happening to me kind of, kind of similar sci-fi trope that you wind up seeing a lot, kind of in that vein of Alien, with Sigourney Weaver's character and Ripley, kind of like knowing that she's a badass, but also knowing that there are things that she just won't be able to handle on her own.
Discovered xenotype technology on the corpse of a sentient. Scan is indicating potential for suit augmentation. Appears safe to repurpose. System integration complete. Performing a function test to confirm.
Love that angle to it, and I thought that was brilliant and kind of drove that home in a bigger and really cool way. I won't spoil story stuff for you because I think that there's things in there, especially the deeper you get into it, that you'll really enjoy. But I just love the way that they kind of laid out the story for the game, and I think that it has its own lore, and leaves you kind of wanting for more stuff in the way that kind of lays it all out. Story aside, one of the biggest and most important parts of this entire game is the combat systems. It is really good. It is tight. It feels super responsive. Every gun feels really interesting. You'll definitely find favorites early on with modifiers that come into play. They did a really cool job in terms of the subsystems for weapons. So You have your initial weapon that'll have whatever kind of base stats that it has, or it'll do its base kind of firing rate or firing type. Some are kind of more shotguns, some are more pistols, some are more machine guns and SMGs. But where it gets really interesting is the further down the line that you play the game, you wind up seeing all these different traits and these other secondary attributes that then add other things to your weapons. So like you'll have a gun that will shoot, like a normal AR would shoot, and then it'll add homing missiles to it, or it'll add homing bullets to it. Or you'll have some where you'll have an alt fire, which are different layers to the gun too. So you have the attributes, you have this kind of traits, and then you have an alt fire. Those traits will then be unlockable the more you use that gun. So for instance, I had a rocket launcher that initially shot 3 rockets. And then throughout the game, I would get other traits that would go along with that. Before, it would be a manual push for each button, for each shot. Then there would be traits that would make it auto fire. So you'd basically just have to hold down the button and all the rockets would kind of go out in a burst. Then they would have ones where the rockets would go all out in a burst, but then you get one big rocket that goes out right at the end. They'd have ones where the rocket's home. You'd have ones where all those other parts kind of like work together. And then you have your alt fires. Your alt fires are various different kinds of secondary traits that go across different weapons at certain times. The cool thing is that you can have any kind of alt fire with any weapon. Some guns will have, well, that's not true. I think some guns will have specific ones and some may not, but I think that they'll have, like, for the most part, some of them you'll kind of understand will go with certain weapons and some won't. Like, so there is a alt fire that basically shoots a bunch of electricity that you hold down. You can continuously fire the electricity. One is another one where you have basically a huge, portal that you shoot that goes out and basically zaps anything in its range and then explodes. You have other ones that are, you shoot out tentacles that go out into the world and do stuff like that. The gun design, the weapon design that Housemarque has put in here shows just how well they think about weapon systems across all their games, and now the combination within it inside of Returnal. It feels really well done in a way that, again, shows you just how much their expertise leans into this genre in a really profound way. It's something that makes you think like, wow, if I were to give them some other guns and other games, what would they do with them? And they would probably knock it out of the park 10 times out of 10. So weapon systems feel really, really good. There are other subsystems within the game that talk to your upgrades, talk to you about how you stay alive, talk to you about, some of the other elements that are in there. One thing before I move over to that is there is an active reload system in the game called Overload or Overcharge, I believe, which is really crucial to how you play this game. So you'll want to empty out your magazine, and then you'll see a meter on the screen that will fill up. And then if you hit your shoot button in between that small space, you will get to reload faster. It is very much Gears of War in that way, but it is super well done within this game as well, and really crucial. Another thing that I want to dig into before I get into some other systems really quickly, I think, is from a controller perspective. The DualSense is the star here. The DualSense is, again, a piece of technology that we haven't really seen the full capacity and capabilities of yet. This game is really tapping on that in a real way. Like, we've had the conversation about adaptive triggers, about how you deal with that and kind of, add layers to that. The two things that really rock with this are sound. I never thought that I'd get so much clear and concise sound in terms of a small controller speaker, but they've done a really good job of, if you're playing with headphones, take your headphones off, drop the TV down, volume down, and listen to the sounds that are coming out of your controller when you shoot different weapons. They are all different, and they all sound different. They all sound different in the way that they shoot and the way that they kind of spin up too. So it's also a really cool visual and auditory thing that you have that goes along with that. Secondly is the haptic feedback stuff. I know people have talked about this in the game before, or at least talked about it in previews, but like the idea again of like feeling rain being a thing is an actual thing. Feeling the reload in your triggers is a real thing in the controller. It feels that good. And it feels really, really well done. The third thing is an option in the game that I would tell people to try out first. You can, in the controls, you can go in and hit a toggle for adaptive controls, which basically means that when you pull the trigger down, it halfway stops. That half stop is the ability for you to go between your normal fire and your alt fire. I didn't necessarily use this one because I had done it in the classic mode initially, which basically is like hold down a button to zoom in, and then use your other trigger to shoot, and then use the one of the other bumpers for your alt fire. But I went back and tried it out for a little bit, and it's really good. It's really awesome way to play. I may go back and try it and kind of get more used to it. It just was a thing that I just didn't get used to in my first run because I was trying to get things done in terms of review. So it is a thing that I would say check out first. See if you like it, then go back to classic if you don't think that that's a thing that you want to dig into. World systems really fast. There are multiple ways to upgrade your suit, which you'll go through consecutive runs. And the thing that makes the game really interesting is the risk reward factor that you have within the game. So you have a couple of things that will add to your play, which is one, parasites, which will have a buff and a debuff. Sometimes those debuffs are terrible, like it'll make your map screw up. Some ways that if you ever pick up an item, you'll take damage. There are ways to remove those through consumables, also through other parts of the game that I won't spoil yet. And then there are other kind of pods around the world that are pods and chests around the world. And they look to be infected, and this infection will usually cause you to either take damage when you collect it, or it will add one of the things that we call is a malfunction. The malfunction is a debuff that stays with you until you do something, or you complete a task, or you fulfill a requirement to remove that thing. It becomes really rough when you're trying to figure out like, oh, I don't have enough health right now. Do I take this thing that might potentially help me because I need the potential of possibly getting some health, but it might give me some detrimental attributes later on. It's a really cool concept in the way that they've done the risk reward stuff in a game that's already hard. Plus it's also a roguelike, so you're not going to get all the stuff that you had back. There are artifacts that you wind up getting in the game that are pickups that you wind up keeping throughout the rest of your run. Those are super important to get because that will absolutely change the way that you look at and how you play the game. But there is a level of RNG to it that you just can't, you just have to deal with. And you'll go through runs where you were doing really, really well, and you wanted to get greedy and you went to the extra room, and that extra room was the room that got you, because you didn't expect there to be a mega boss there, or, you didn't have, the right kind of weapons for that particular fight. So it does lean into the idea of like, take your time, play this game slowly in some aspects where you'll have to, because you have to try to build up your health. You have to try to build up your weapons, all those kinds of things. Really quick thing that I forgot to talk about in terms of weapons is, and I think it's really important, is two aspects, is your proficiency, which is a meter that continuously grows. You can make it grow faster by collecting things in the world, or you kind of get upgrades that help to move that along. But every time you kill about 3 to 4 enemies, your weapon gets stronger. It adds extra layers of attributes to your weapon that help your weapon kind of do more damage. It goes up from level 0 to 5. 5 being the highest. And when you're at level 5, you never want to get hit, because once you get hit, all of that energy goes away. It all dissipates, and you have to restart that counter over again. It doesn't take long, but it is a thing that when you're looking to do high damage, you need to keep that number high. So you want to make sure you're not getting hit, which you can do through dashing. There are shields. There are other ways you kind of keep yourself safe, but it is always a thing you're thinking about. It is always a thing that you're trying to account for, is please don't get hit. Don't get hit at this moment by any of these bullets, because it's going to drop down my power in that respect, which is something that's super wild. I try to keep this pretty quick and short. It is absolutely my game of the year. people are constantly having the conversation about, is a game worth $70? I totally understand. I got this as a code from Sony. Thank you, Sony. Provided by PlayStation, #ad. But I will say, I was hype on this game for everything that I've seen from it. I'd seen all the previews. I was super excited for it then, and I'm really excited for it now. There are very few games that I go to bed thinking about and then waking up thinking about. And that was me for Returnal. I would go to sleep and I was like, damn, I wish I could have did a couple more runs. And I was like, I didn't have enough time. I'd wake up in the morning, go back to work, and was like, damn, I wish I could be playing some Returnal right now because I want to finish the story. I want to get through the next stuff. I want to see the next guns. I want to see all the cool weapons and the new worlds that I'd see across its 6 biomes, which are gorgeously rendered and beautiful with all these kind of variations on enemies and enemy types and the way that they attack you. And it's all really, really just so fun and chaotic and frustrating and brilliant and all of those things at once. It is a really strange game to be a flagship title for a new system, but they have nailed it in every possible way that I can think of. I am so high on this game. I have to go back and finish it up. There are very few games that I care about completion to 100%. I'm going to try to complete this thing on 100% because I just want to see where everything lands in terms of this game. Hitting so many high notes, being such a hard game that really is going to be something that's going to be a little bit of a gatekeeper-y game. It's going to hold people away because of the way that you can't save your game. There's some challenges that you can do once you've gotten past a certain level as a kind of score run ability. There's also a really interesting and super cool online component to the game where people who have died in the world, you can either try to save them and kind of collect their resources, or you can basically turn them into monsters to fight. It's so dope. Like, it was hard to kind of do it because there weren't a lot of people playing it when the game was out, or at least when we were getting a chance to review it. But I checked it out, but I was super underpowered and didn't know how the systems work when I did it initially. So I don't know what that's going to look like in terms of that. But I do know also there's going to be a day one patch. So they may put in some other aspects of the game that we haven't seen yet. It's going to be interesting to see how the game plays also post-patch, to see what they've changed and how that stuff is kind of maneuvered. But I'm just saying, this game is one of my like up here games. This is one of my top 10 games of all time. I'm not blowing smoke. It's very rare for me to get this excited about a game and stay this high on a game, even after it kicks my ass as much as it has. And it will kick your ass as much as it kicked my ass. So go through it with some patience and understand that there's some good stuff in there. I think there's a couple of quick things I want to share in terms of accessibility. I think they're really important. There are some colorblind modes in there I think that are important. I wonder how the accessibility community is going to come to this game because of the fact that there's no dynamic difficulty in it. And the fact you can't really turn that up or down. The UI in terms of your reticle is very, very thin. You can thicken it within some of the options within the option settings, which I think you should absolutely do. It helps to kind of see where your bullets are going to go when they're going to land. So I would say, please turn that on. That makes a big difference in that respect. But for the most part, this is a system selling game. If you really like shumps, if you really like hard games, if you really like roguelikes in this way, Returnal is a brilliant game, and it gets a 10 out of 10 in my book for sure. Definitely game of the year material, and definitely my game of the year so far. So thank you everybody for checking out the review. Thank you so much for hanging out. More stuff coming very, very soon. Again, thank you to PlayStation for providing the code. Housemark, I love you. You knocked it out of the park. Much love to you all. We'll see you all very soon. Peace.